All right, welcome, Brian Torrance. Brian is Executive Director of Everactive Schools. Thrilled to have him on. Have him on, obviously, for his role with Everactive Schools, but also in the broader sector. Phenomenal individual to work with. I consider a friend over the years, and that's why we have it on. And so that's the extent of my intro. I want to turn over to Brian so he can tell us about himself and his journey, and how do you get to where you are today.
Okay, awesome, Johnny. Really good to see you again, and really good to do this. I was excited when you reached out. My journey, and I'll connect back to sport as much as possible, but I have a very broad definition of sport that I'll
I think that's the key thing, Brian. This is not. I look at it as the full bubble. It's like it's sport, physical activity, recreation, people, and I think it's interesting as a journey. It's the further you get away from a certain place, but you end up back where you are. I think that's all part of the fun of this, the journey side of things.
Yeah, true. Born in North Vancouver, so grew up in North Vancouver, played every sport under the sun, mostly baseball. Our minor league baseball team was sponsored by the North Shore Crematorium, and I didn't know what crematorium meant at the time, but we had green jerseys that said North Shore Crematorium, so that was between ages 5 to 11. So anyways, I learned what crematorium meant. I was appreciated for their sponsorship. But yeah, lots of baseball, soccer, tons of road hockey. Actually, not much ice hockey in Vancouver, lots of road hockey. Love tennis, so started to play tennis. But it was very much in me. I work within schools now, and we always battle this aspect that we have so many kids dropping out of phys ed when it becomes mandatory in grade 11 and 12. But I was in, there was no doubt I was taking phys ed, and I didn't know what the other subjects would be. So yeah, definitely in my blood. My dad played some lacrosse when he was young, but he was very active in racquetball. I remember going to tournaments to watch him, and I think mentorship and role modeling is really important. And my mom was a terrific runner, so she was kind of running marathons in the 80s when not many women were running marathons. So that was kind of like an inspiration to see her run. I know we'd go out for dinner in North Vancouver, and we'd be 18 miles away from home. My mom would be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna run home," and we're like, "What?" After dinner. So I kind of grew up with that, and I think that's important. Looking back, I understood the privileges I had in terms of picking and choosing whatever activities that I aspired to have. I had that support. As I moved along, I can see where the sector is and what I had and what sliver I was in. So I'm fortunate for that, but I also look upon and reflect that I had a lot of privilege there. After high school, I kind of bounced around to some colleges in Vancouver or Vancouver area, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. Was always an appeal to be involved with physical education. I think at that point I was thinking a teacher. I remember thinking okay, if I'm a teacher, maybe I don't love teaching, but I can coach and I can be involved with sport that way. So through that, I ended up coming to U of A. I thought U of A was in Calgary at the time, but I got the clarity that University of Alberta was in the beautiful capital city of Edmonton. And when I got here, I was involved with phys ed and rec, faculty of phys ed and rec. And I was still in this kind of place. I didn't know where phys ed and rec would take me, whether it was going to be sport management or whether it was going to be, recreation based, or again, I hadn't closed the door on education. But I joined the cross country team. So I remember going into the track and field office and a wonderful track and field coach at the time, but very much, European 1970s kind of approach style. And I, told them I wanted to be on the team, and I asked them, how my times were. And I really didn't run in high school. I played soccer, and I kind of came to fitness later. I think looking upon good genetics through my family, I kind of really didn't realize that when I was young. So I didn't have a lot of time. So I remember the coach looked at my time, and he looked at me and he said, "You would not make the girls team." And I was like, well, okay, there's different times there, but could I show up? And I think the most wonderful thing about choosing a sport like cross country or track and field is, and other sports need to learn from this, is everyone should be there. So it doesn't matter if you're making the traveling team or going to nationals or just trading. So you can make the team, and that aspect and that culture within cross country running that you're going to make the team regardless. You can come down to the park and run. Really introduced me to that team and that element of varsity sport, which I loved, and that was brand new to me. I didn't think that would be a goal. And then that kind of varsity sport experiences took me into a master's in science in the Faculty of Medicine and Dentistry, where I was looking at the power of physical activity and cardiorespiratory fitness around health. And it introduced me to my community and my network that I still very much have today. So in terms of that aspect of like sports and physical activity, like I can pinpoint so many existing elements of my life that came from those introductions to sports, and especially being at U of A and meeting, a larger community. So that's how I got into it. After my master's, there was a job that came up, and it was a dream job. It was awesome. I was around health promotion and being on the right side of this discussion that we need to further invest in wellness and support people to stay healthy as compared to just treat people when they're sick. And that job was with Everactive Schools, and that was 10 years ago. So I'm still here now. So that was a long-winded response, but that's how I became here.
That's awesome. But like I know, we talked many times, and in this sector, it's very you have your ups, but there's also like the downtimes, like we're talking about before we started this. It's like there are some discouraging times. Like what keeps you in it?
Yeah, the story's not done. I don't think we've got the story complete. Yeah, that definitely keeps me in it. We haven't, it's a societal goal too, but we haven't turned this ship around to say, if somebody's entering the hospital, that's where the healthcare system failed. Like we consider the healthcare system if we have an ultimate outcome, which is illness or death or those kind of events in someone's health. But we should really be looking upon enhancing people's quality of life and keeping them healthy and happy as long as possible. And that's still very much an uphill battle. I'm very passionate to that piece. I hope I have some evidence and knowledge around the importance of that piece that I can still contribute. I think within nonprofit and charitable sector, within that sector, which is primarily where sport lives, there becomes growth and attachment to different organizations, which is really hard for people to let go of. Actually, just got an email from a person today, and she's leaving her space that she's been in for the last 20 years. And to make that leap and to make that decision, I think is very, very, very hard personally for people because they are so passionate to it. I hope it's okay it is okay for people to say I'm leaving and I gave everything I could to this space, and then they move on to new adventures. But I think it's hard for people in our space, and I think I battle with that personally a lot. That I always tell the people closest to me, I was like, tell me when I should go. Like tell me when it's okay for me to go, or when I'm not contributing as much as I can anymore, or I'm not contributing in the way that can make the most impact. So I think it's always a refreshing thing to have that reflection. But I think people are pretty connected to their work, and that's why they stay. But I feel the work's not finished. I feel the work's not finished in terms of building or having an organization here that can do its best work. And I definitely feel there's a lot more goals to happen at a sector level that we could all contribute to.
Okay, the guilt thing is an interesting thing around this work, because when I think of it and I look at it, it's that you get it for a lot of get in for sort of the reasons that you talk about, where there's that larger societal, and so okay, we're doing something, we're giving, so there's attachment to that, and there's a feeling an obligation, is like I got to do that, and then there's that double-edged sort of like, okay, am I still doing that? Am I staying too long? Or if I walk away, is this hurting things? And it's just like, and walk away is not the term I want to use, but like there's that side, because there is that emotional attachment and connection. It's a really hard thing, I think, to really come to grips with. Like you talked about, it's so interesting, and it's such a personal movement, I find, when it comes to that. And so not to keep things so deep, I'm going to go bring it back up to so now you're because you teach as well, like you connect with the sort of that next generation. And what is your elevator pitch to those students or individuals when they come to you and say, well, what is it like, should I be working or consider working in physical activity and sport and rec?
Yeah, I did have an opportunity to teach this semester, and I really did enjoy that. And one aspect of it was creating content and creating lectures to engage with students. But actually, the one piece that I didn't anticipate and that I really had to work hard on was engaging that group. So I think my element of engagement was different at 45 years old as compared to 20 years old. And that's something I really learned. But I think the more we work together, like everything, the more we built a relationship. So the students in the class and myself built a relationship. But, you know, the thing that I came to a lot in terms of the students, and it would be this would be kind of the elevator pitch, is that, you know, sport is a driver to so many different things as compared to just how we narrow sport in terms of maybe just like competition, podiums, kind of that journey. Like sport is community, sport is health recovery, sport is social connectedness. And I think you don't have that in other areas where it could be so vast, you could do so many different things under one umbrella. And you also connect your professional aspirations to have a career in a very positive place. But I think it's also a very deep connection to people personally, that they can also aspire to have some personal goals and to be involved with the sports sector. So that was a long elevator ride, but I hope I got it.
That's right. Hopefully you'll keep them on for a couple floors because they're so.
It's like the new City of Edmonton Towers. Yeah.
We're just gonna take the ride back down too.
Yeah.
All right, Brian. Now, what's your story? So, and then what I mean by the story, like we heard the story of how you got here, but when you're gonna tell that one story, that's like, okay, this is sort of why I'm in this, or this is the story that sticks out for me about why sport and rec physical activity is so important. What's the story for you personally that sticks out for you as what crystallizes things for you?
Yeah, and I appreciated the heads up on this because I didn't have one, and and as much as I've had a journey of like personal absolute joy and like massive satisfaction in terms of like being able to run, and I need to run and move every day. Like I did bring it back to, I think, like the work that we do within like as a sector, and the work that we do within schools. So so that the story will come from, I was involved with U of A, and all these different wonderful things that were coming my way through my time at the U of A, and it goes by fast when you're that age. Just being involved with the team, having that relationship on campus, and having that like identity. It really was part of your identity to be involved with the varsity sport team. But I had the opportunity to work with, I think it was, I want to say now looking back, it was probably a Universiade Games kind of concept, but it was around international wrestling. So we were I was just volunteering at this international wrestling tournament, and I didn't know anything about wrestling. Like I had seen the teams practice a little bit. They were, you know, they were by the track, so we kind of saw them that way. But I knew nothing about wrestling. And here was an international wrestling event that I was volunteering at. And I couldn't believe the community that was there. I couldn't believe, I was blown away that the global aspect of that sport, or of that event. They asked me what I wanted to do, and I just said, you know, I'll do wherever you need me, but I'm happy to, like, you know, drive diplomats or I guess they call them VIPs around and things like that. And just like the passion and understanding I had for a youth sport that I had no idea of within that 3 days of hanging out with people blew me away. So I think we get pretty stuck on our own worlds and our own sport, but it just like maybe brought to light of how many different sports, or how many different communities, or how many different people are involved with all these different levels of sport. And the sport that we see on TV, or the sport that we see within our news, is only such a small element of this like a larger global community, and they all care so much. Sport gives back to them as much as they give back to sport. But I hadn't understood the power and impact of maybe sports outside of my life, as compared to taking an event. Like if someone said you're going to volunteer at a wrestling tournament, I would have thought there'd be 40 people there. And it just blew me away at the size and the joy and the friendship, and like the intensity of competition. I had never seen that competition that close. So it was something that I never expected, but it was a good reflect to me to how big and how wonderful this this sport is. And that was a long time ago, but I remember that tournament quite vividly. I remember the You're the Best song, the Karate Kid song at the time. They just kept playing that after each match, and I'm like, oh. So I still work out to that song. Yeah. So yeah, it just opened my eyes that it's a massive world, and it's a wonderful world, and I love globally how many people sport touches.
Yeah, I gotta say it's funny like when you're talking about that song, definitely that, and that song definitely is like resonating through my head right now, and I'm getting pumped up. But when you're talking about that, and you think about sport, and I'm even thinking about recently moved to a new community and thinking about sport and their kids, and it's not all right. We're doing sport because we're getting my daughter to the Olympics and gymnastics, or no, my son's gonna play professional soccer. It's like, all right, how do we get connected to the community, get them physically active so that they're happier stuff. It's all about those things, and and I think that's the part where the power sport and like that, and getting them physically active and being part of a community, and the community side is the piece that I've seen more and more. Just like I know the work that we were doing together, it all came back to like when things started to fit together in that community space. It's like, oh, there's so many things that this does. That's the power, and I think really exciting. I think we're like when you were talking about earlier about the work's not done, and I think that's the space where the work's going to get done, like at the community level. So that's I love that. I love that story, because I think for some people, I just look at it and see it's like, okay, that thing is happening over there, and it's like, but when you jump into it, it's like, oh wow, this is special. That's cool.
Yeah, okay. It's a whole lot of wonderfulness too, and I'd echo that community element, and I think we need to get that narrative really right, or we're essentially doing a disservice. And I think there's some organizations with some capacity and some like alignments that we really need to kind of like ensure that message is getting across. Like, this is friendships, this is community, this is health promotion, this is a connection to school, this is reconciliation. Like that's the power of sport. And we'll get it. Yeah. We'll get it right. Yeah.
All right, Brian, this is the last question. I didn't send you this in advance because this is my gotcha question. I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
All right. So I know you like to run and get out there, but if you had the opportunity, it could be anywhere, like cost is not an option, time's not an option. You had to pick your place, pick your setting, pick if you want to do it on your own or with a group when it comes to going for a run. What does that look like for you?
So I could run anywhere with anyone?
Run anywhere with anyone, any setting, anytime. That
was hard. If I had to go tennis, it'd be Wimbledon center court against Federer. I go to Wimbledon center court to watch Federer. Running special, and again back to like the globalness of that sport. It is everywhere. I grew up in North Vancouver, and still now being essentially close to the West Coast here in Edmonton, is Oregon's always the mecca for running, and Eugene, Oregon is kind of the birthplace of Nike, Steve Prefontaine, and those kind of like those trails in Oregon. But there's a field there called Hayward Field, which is the home of the University of Oregon and where Prefontaine had his heyday. So that is a legendary track. It still is. They still host international meets there. But there's like this practice track they do, and they kind of like carved it out of the forest. So I'd take my friends here that I run with all the time, and this wonderful community of people that I know here, and maybe some people in Vancouver and Winnipeg and other friends that have moved on. And I'd take us there, and we do whatever 10 by a K or something like that. But we do it on that practice track, and we definitely go for a beer afterwards. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
All right, Brian, thanks so much. This was phenomenal. It was great just to chat and learn more about you, and enlightening us on, once again, why this sector is so interesting and provides so much variety and opportunity. So thank you for your time. And I look forward to connecting again soon.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Johnny. Take care.